I can't help but think of everything around us, everything around me, as existing as an intersection of desires. People, places, landscapes, all mediated by desire. But it doesn't stop there for me. Even objects, everyday stuff, all the plastics and trash and goods for consumption, canned goods and paper goods, toys and t-shirts, objects that seem inanimate to us, you name it. Even if you don't buy into animism, the idea that there is a soul or spirit in everything that exists, you must at least accept that every object lies nestled within a crossroads of the desires that led to its creation. Always. In this way, I think of all objects as objects of desire. And I think that part of the job of the historian, or the collector, or the archaeologist, or the artist, is to acknowledge the desire that produces certain objects of their choice, to acknowledge their place in that. Call it a matter of aesthetics, call it a matter of economics, call it culture, a matter of accumulation, extraction, excretion, runoff, byproduct. But the intention and investment of money, time, labor, effort behind every object produced is a form of desire. The question is always, whose? Even our creation of technologies to aid in our creation of objects seems to be alive, energized by forces that mimic the same processes that occur in the wild, wide universe. We imitate nature in our creative capacities. We imprint our mark into media like fossils. But you still can't escape the necessity of desire in this accomplishment, be it ink on a page or the relief of a clay tablet. I mean desire from the Latin desiderare, to long for, wish for, demand, expect. I mean each of those words. I mean desire in the sense of physical bodily longing, longing not just in order to survive, but also in order to thrive. And also, and emphatically, I mean to invoke the root words de and sedere, from the stars, as in awaiting what the stars will bring, as in maybe the divinity that exists is pure desire made manifest in infinite possibilities of connection and combination, comprised of elements extracted from the earth that once were at the bottom of some sea, and before that were from outer space among the stars. Desire is heavenly and grounded at the same time. And we have come such a long way to feel this way, to be here, even to name and grow and tend the fields of geology and archaeology and history and art from their mother, astronomy, itself a frail human creation to describe the need to know. There is no knowledge without desire. The older something is, the longer it has survived, the more those desires pile up and heap onto it like invisible strata, crust, mantle, and core. Or maybe I mean to say the longer an artifact has survived, the more pressure it's under, like organisms that can withstand immense pressure of living at great depths in the ocean. Or maybe I'm asking you to visualize your favorite blanket floating in outer space, floating in relation to a lot of other debris, all having enough structural integrity to maintain orbit around the nearest sun-like star in its galaxy, which is you, and your need for it to be so. Maybe all three of these visualizations are the same object at different times in its existence, moved along by some hot and heavy forces. I reduce the cosmos, or expand the cosmos, to a series of desires because I'm trying to talk about history from a queer perspective, which is also about desires. Desires for liberation that are alive, both here and now, and deeply related to how we love ourselves and one another. You could say it's my basic unit of measurement to analyze the present as well as the past, even if the ultimate expression of these desires come in the form of their impact upon the future. But to hone in on what I really want to fantasize about, from so many possibilities, let's talk about human history, about liberatory human history, as in the history of objects that document and demand the need to liberate humans from their most harmful and oppressive systems of belief and the means of their oppression. Objects like this are made of desire and communicate certain desires too. Objects that exist in this history because their creators wanted it so badly to be so. Protest posters, leather vests with patches and spikes, books that incite the abolition of prisons, books that incite the abolition of gender. These too are things that have sprouted up at the crossroads of desires, made possible in many cases by urges so strong that they could overcome all obstacles and attempts at suppression. These objects of resistance, objects that protest injustice, objects that demand a new world, they rely on many agents, much collaboration, to ensure their safe passage and preservation in the friction of their motion through hostile environments. Sometimes I imagine certain pieces of paper and books I handle are such flat surfaces because they have become impressed by the forces of desire bearing down upon them, mediating their shape. It's not just a matter of convenience, I imagine. Instead, they actually start out as these bulging, excessive masses of vibrant knowledge through form, but like they've been worn down flat by so many forms of mediation and superstition, compressed by desires external to their creation that nonetheless have a hand in shaping them. Of course, I am just being fanciful. Printing itself is a form of impression, from the Latin impressionem, which means a pressing into or upon, from impressus, to press into, to stamp, also to imply with pressure. And flat surfaces work best for that, unlike bubbles. Now just close your eyes, or keep them open, and think of all the forces at work in producing the objects that you read called books. I know I do. Forces of desire, some of them not legible to me, some of them never to be comprehended by me, but some of them as visible and recognizable as the face of a friend. There is the linguistic and semiotic possibilities within reading. I see the words, and I perceive some meanings in them. There is the endocrinological reading. My body, chemistry, and hormonal balance make me experience the meanings of these words and process them and remember them in certain ways. Some books I remember through pure feeling. Some books I remember through quotations here and there. Some books a mixture of how they made me cry or stay up all night or consider their characters to be my friends. There is a historic reading. I know something about the situation of the author and what was going on for them when they wrote it, and maybe a little bit about the subject they're writing about. There's the technological reading. I know the machines that printed the book and the stitches that bound it together and the networks of distribution that got it into my hands. Then there's the ecological reading. I walk along the rivers that powered the paper mills that pulped the wood fibers into paper, the galls that became the black ink, the hides of sheep and cattle that became the binding. There's the geological reading. I know about the mines where the minerals came from to power the computers that coordinated the writing of the manuscript, its editing, all of the logistics involved in getting the book into my hands, the oil or gas or wind or sun that powered the machines that we worked with to make it all happen. Now, I don't mean to overwhelm you. Instead, I mean to revel in this excess because to me it is beautiful. I have long been in love with the rhetorical heaping figure. In George Putnam's 1589 Art of English Poesy, he names Sinethrismus, who he calls the heaping figure. To Putnam, it's not a very positive attribute, this rhetorical term for piling up words, usually adjectives, in excess. When I wrote fan fiction as a teenager, it was popular to heap on the adjectives. When I pursued degrees in higher education, it was a huge liability. So instead of heaping words, I decided I could follow the rhetoric in other ways, heaping contexts, heaping objects together, heaping slips of paper into assembly. And I have become Sinethrismus, a collector or union of diverse words and their lineages, creating piles of context to justify to myself the objects, the artifacts whose histories I hold dear. These heaping readings are ultimately a spell to conjure up the spirits of those who made them. Our shared desires for these books and papers to survive becomes our moment of connection across time. and our shared desires to create our own words demand the production of more printings and more objects, more to add to the continuing story of queer and gender nonconforming lives, a little paper trail to follow and push us forward into some horizon that might in fact be a kinder world. What else can we do but constantly reclaim these means of production for our own ends? These documents, which attest that there are other ways of being, allow us to move a little farther forward in their attainment, to create a new world. These objects of desire document mentalities, times, places, relationships that we may choose to keep or choose to leave behind. And each choice pushes us a little farther out into somewhere new, beyond what has been said, to what has yet to be spoken. Which doesn't mean that, seen from an aerial view, they exist in any kind of heaping figure enough to be distinguished from everything else. A lot of paper survives, and even more media of other forms, mineral and clay, digital and ancient. And many of these forms contain competing, if not completely destructive ideologies and chart harmful behaviors that seem to have too much momentum to ever end. But I still believe it's worth creating an excess of liberatory energy through queer protest and queer storytelling, queer abundance and queer solidarity with all other activisms against oppression. I still believe that we must save these documents and photocopy them and produce more of them, toward the hope of turning on more people to the desires that they document. And because each of these objects demands a space, a tabletop, a shelf, a wall, a building, an archive, a community center, if we make enough of them, they can be combined together to create more spaces for people to come together. Communities held accountable to the politics and struggles of their chosen ancestors, to the ideas of liberation, to their dreams and their desires.